Okay, all right, I think we are live. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. This is the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee for West Chicago Community High School. I'd like to begin by just going around the room and having everybody say their name and they're either, if they're a parent, if they're a faculty member, and if you're a student, say what year you are as a student. And we're actually going to start on my left. This one. Go ahead.
I'm Veronica Jimenez Winton, and I am the Director of the Dean's Office and the Director of the Bilingual Department.
I'm Mary Howard. I'm the Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning.
I am Alexandra Parker. I am a science teacher here at West Chicago.
I am Janet Hurtado. I'm one of the deans.
Hi, I'm Megan Dusing. I'm a parent of a senior and a junior here at WeGo.
I am Brittany Nelson. I am a teacher at West Chicago. I teach Spanish, and I'm in the EL department.
I am Liliana Arreola. I am a parent.
Hi, I'm Sonia Romanos, and I'm the interpreter for Liliana and Rosalba.
Hi, I'm Meg, and I'm a parent of a sophomore.
Hi, I'm Patty Weber, and I'm a parent of 4, 3 graduates and 1 current student here.
Hi, I'm Kelly Ashline. I'm a parent of a senior and a freshman.
Hi, I'm Olivia Zirko, and I'm a sophomore.
Hi, I'm Sneha George, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Edgar. I'm a freshman.
I'm Valeria, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a junior.
I'm Jenna Wint. I'm the current division head of Art and World Languages, and next year will be the director of Culture and Climate.
Fantastic. Well, great. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. You've got tonight's agenda in front of you. And before we jump into our public participation, I just want to take one quick second as a reminder of the purpose of our committee. We are what is referred to as an advisory committee. Our job and our charge is to talk about topics that are important and relevant to the entire school and the entire school community, and to make recommendations. So those recommendations can be around practices and procedures for the administration to implement, or they can be around policy for the Board of Education to possibly consider adopting. So knowing that, I do want to first of all, thank this group, too, for the great work that we've done. We've done some really great work over the past years and made some really important recommendations that have changed day-to-day life here at WeGo. And we've also done some really incredible things that we're going to talk about again tonight as we think about next school year and beyond. So with that being our purpose, I want to give a moment for public comment. This is an opportunity for any members of the community who may want to speak publicly here to do so. We have received no electronic comments, and at this time, I don't see anybody here to make public comment. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic. We need to do the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. If you guys recall, that meeting took place on October 17th, so if you could turn to the second through, I believe, 5th pages in your packet, 6th page, I'm sorry, that is our minutes. I'm going to give all of us a few minutes to look through it, and then to please make any comments for changes. And if there are none, then we will approve the minutes. Does anybody have any questions, comments, additions, or deletions to the minutes from our last meeting? Okay. If there are none, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Ashline. Does anybody want to second that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Weber. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. I'm looking at you, Olivia. No, okay, all right. Just checking. All right, great. We're going to move on to our first discussion topic. That is regarding grading practices here at West Chicago High School. And tonight, we're very fortunate to have a guest presenter, Mrs. Mary Howard, our assistant principal of teaching and learning, who's got, if you turn past the minutes, you'll see some additional documents in your packet regarding grading practices here at WeGo. And with that, I will turn it over to Mrs. Howard.
Thank you. I asked to just be able to be here tonight to share with you, as one of our parent groups, information on where we are currently regarding grading practices, and to give you guys a kind of formal orientation to where we are as well. So in 2022, we started looking at our grading practices here in the building. Following the pandemic, we had really been looking at ways that structures were impeding kids' ability to be successful, and we really investigated the concept of grading for equity, which is also the title of a book that we use kind of as the basis for the work that we did. It started with a small committee of people who were just interested in the topic, who worked with Dr. Dwyer doing research on the book itself. We had some teachers that were willing to pilot some different strategies and structures in order to look at the impact that grading can have on student achievement. And then ultimately we made some decisions that were implemented across the building since 2022. So the two most significant of those are on the handout, if you have it in front of you, where it says the April Parent Teacher Advisory Committee. It's on the, thank you, it's on that handout. At the top there, it's reviewing just what our grading philosophy is, and really emphasizing that the idea is that we're trying to give students a rigorous experience, regardless of the course that they're enrolled in or their grade level, and really wanting to look at the role of formative assessment, or students having opportunities to practice and receive feedback before they would complete a summative or a test. And then we've also moved to the practice of being able to take a retake on any of the summative, or generally what we'd consider to be a unit exam. So the 90-10 weighting in the gradebook, what that means is that currently in all of our courses outside of physical education, art, music, and special education, that 90% of the grade is based on assessments, and 10% of the grade is based on any kind of practice that particular course might include. So sometimes that's homework, classwork, informal presentations, discussions, things like that. So the reason that I'm here today is that we've been gathering feedback from staff over the last few months to talk about what they have learned about our grading practices through the 3 years of implementation that we've had in place. The way that we implemented these practices was intended in a very philosophically based, rather than anything that was really particularly practically minded. In terms of what we were doing was making decisions that are kind of completely based in research, regardless of what that might look like in practice in a classroom or a building. And so what I mean by that is our goal would be that every grade was as completely accurate as possible, that it was capturing exactly what students knew, and that ultimately that semester grade was kind of a level of perfection that we know, if we're being very objective, is impossible. So what would be reasons for that? Students might have a bad day, right? They might not be able to perform on an assessment. There could be different issues of test anxiety. Sometimes it might be a reason because of the way that we're asking a student to perform. So some students may perform better in a multiple choice or objective format. Others might be particularly talented speaking or writing. So we know that we have to give some level of honesty to the fact that our grades aren't going to be perfect. But what we are trying to do is to get them to be as pure as possible, and that was the reason that we moved to the 90% on the summative assessment. The feedback from the teachers, which you can see kind of in the third paragraph there, has focused on some of the issues that have arisen because of the structures that we've put in place. So one of the things that was our intention was to give students, a number of opportunities, including a total retake if necessary of each of the assessments that they might take. Some of the things that are happening, however, just because of being human, being teenagers and all of that, is that at times kids are not engaging in homework the way that we would anticipate or need or require because we've gone to a 90% on assessment. We have students who are not necessarily engaging fully in terms of the assessment that happens because they know that there is always a retake opportunity that is guaranteed for each of those. We have sometimes where students, we have given teachers the option to test students on just one component of an assessment if a student has a problem with just one particular skill. And at times there are instances where students will spend an entire period on part of a test instead of all of the test, knowing that they can retake the test focusing on that other component of it. So essentially kind of what is trying to be captured in that paragraph there is talking about that without overstating that every teacher has this opinion, that in general the feedback is that we're seeing some negative impacts in student executive functioning, so in terms of their organization or what sometimes we might want to think of as real world skills that they were hoping that they develop. We definitely are always having conversations about grit, perseverance, motivation, and obviously that is something that's challenging as a teenager in general. And I think, I believe that Dr. Dwyer has spoken or is going to speak with you about the cell phone component of that, and that's one of the things we've really tried to address in the building is making some changes to have fewer distractions. Oftentimes teachers are asking students to put their phones away or in some kind of case or pockets or whatever, that kind of thing, to try and be as distraction free and kind of encouraging them to be able to engage. So really being able to meaningfully engage in their schoolwork in a full attentive way is something that's just generally very difficult. But also the concern is that because of the structure of grading policies, that has had somewhat of a negative impact as well. You'll see in the second point there under that same heading that there is a concern that students are doing more of cramming for an assessment and not really having that turn into a long-term memory because they're able to, take an assessment in these smaller components or because of the retake component of that. As well as I had mentioned, that there are students who are coming in when it's time for a test and literally perhaps not engaging in it at all and just saying, I'll just take the retake. And so all of those things are, what you would hope would not happen, understandably do, because kids are always trying to make life as manageable as possible. They're balancing a lot of different courses, a number of students who have a number of honors, AP, all of the kinds of extracurriculars that they have. So they're going to use the system in the way that we've set it up. However, these are some unintended consequences that we really are looking at as a group in order to create a system that's going to be the most successful for kids. First of all, in terms of their learning, but also in being able to capture what that grade is. One of the other issues that has come up almost universally in terms of advanced placement coursework has been the concern of that most of the retakes that are happening are from students who are in honors and advanced placement coursework, and that some of that may be setting them up for a situation where that is not accurately capturing what they are able to do or what they'll be able to demonstrate on the actual test in May. One of the comments in particular that sticks in my mind was some written feedback that I had received about the idea that if you're retaking an AP test for every unit, is that not a problem? And so I do think that again is one of the other areas that we're seeing is the experience that we're providing for our students in terms of AP classes with assessments. Is that in any way not capturing their ability of what they'll be able to do continuously going forward. So that's the majority of the feedback that I did want to share with you this evening. I did want to let you know there's the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. So there is a brief survey that you do have in your packet on the next 2 pages after the document that I've been referencing. It's very brief after the 2 kind of demographic questions. There are 9 questions total in this. And so this was shared with families a number of times in March. And I do think that that may not have been great for March and April when we had the principal survey was going out, because I know we had really excellent responses on that survey. But we did have only 28 responses to the parent survey that is there. So the issue with that really was just to give parents an opportunity to think through some of these questions that are really focused just on their own students' choices in terms of retake. So if you would like to take a minute, and I'll maybe just, this is the survey itself, not any responses or results. But essentially, question 3 is asking how often your students are engaging in the reassessment process? So how frequently is that something that they're doing? And then giving us some feedback on why the student may not be doing so. Because one of the things that we had really hoped in particular was that students in our regular level courses be the ones who would engage in the retakes, to give them that extended opportunity in order to have more time and more feedback before taking the final retake, and that's not necessarily something that we've seen over the last 3 years. Questions 5 and 6, then just getting some feedback in general about parent expectations. How important are grades to your student, your family? What are the expectations that you have in terms of the grades that they would generally get? And then talking a little bit about that 90% component, trying to gather some information in terms of what the parents' expectations would be for the student in terms of post-secondary, and then just giving families the opportunity for just any narrative feedback that they did have. So the survey is still open. I have a different version of this survey, very similar, that students are going to have an opportunity to complete in DEN over the next 2 weeks, to give them an opportunity to share a little bit of their reasoning for us to try to help understand some of that. But what I really did want to be here tonight to talk with you about is just kind of the communication component more so. Obviously, as some of the most active parents that we have in the district, especially on the side of grades, that we want to make sure that we're continuing to kind of reach out with some of the things that we're seeing, at least from the building side of it. And so I think being able to be part of the conversation about how can we continue to engage or really re-engage our kids in working hard in classes. So being attentive to daily homework, consistently reading in English class, engaging in the kind of practice work that really makes a difference. And I know hopefully we can kind of talk about that once I finish the monologue. So I think that's one of the needs that we really have from the parents is just overall large scale kind of returning to some of those higher expectation in terms of the students who just may not be there at that point. So we've got to recognize that we have a lot of very high performing kids in our building. Dr. Dwyer was talking with some of the students before the meeting about where their siblings are attending and even the post-college work that they're doing. So that's definitely something that's going on. But there are a few of us in the room who are involved in the strategic planning process. I'm definitely going to be responsible for working with a team on goal 1, which is really about closing achievement gaps and just student achievement in general. And so I feel like in some ways that the pendulum has really swung almost too far in terms of accommodation in some ways towards students, and maybe not being at the point that we were pre-COVID in terms of expectations that we had for student engagement in daily homework, the amount of time that they would be spending in classes and things like that. So I think one of the things that I was here to kind of say to this group, and then as to continue as we go forward is asking for parents to have those conversations with their own students, having, you know, older siblings having those conversations in the community of what can we do to really try to re-engage kids and kind of that really grinding sort of engaged mindset in the courses that they're taking, and really having them aspire to do their personal best, maybe perhaps rather than there's a particular grade that they're okay with. In addition to that, also just continuing to really send the message about all of the resources that the building offers. So whether that's in terms of, you know, teachers like those that we have here tonight, just representing the way that teachers in this building are willing to work with students individually in small groups, before school, after school, during their prep periods. I know some of the feedback, I was looking at the minutes from October. Academic support is very popular. People really speak very highly about that. It's an amazing resource that we just want more and more students to continue to invest in, and not wait for a teacher to assign them to academic support, but really ask to go and use that as a resource. We want to continue to publicize all the after-school tutoring that we have, and then definitely all of the mental health resources, you know, whether that's counselors, social workers, administrators that they know in the building, coaches. I think there's an endless list of people in the building who are here willing to support the students. And one of the things that I have an opportunity to look at is the Panorama data, which is our social emotional survey that we administer in the building twice a year. And one of the things that was shared with faculty in April was really looking at the highest scores that we do have are in the area of that kind of trusted adult component, very much so with students' families. So I think that's something that you really need to hear, that 93% of the responses from the fall were students saying that they have very strong support at home, and that they have you know, parents and family members that they're able to speak with, confide in, whatever it needs to be. And that number, you know, not in the 90s, but very high in the 80s in terms of what we have here in the building as well. We also have students just complete something for us naming who their trusted adult is from DEN early in the year, and that's something that has been very positive as well. So then finally, there are just two pieces that I wanted to emphasize here, and I know one is something that you've spoken about a lot of times in terms of attendance, but just continuing to spread the message that statistically, the data and the research shows that students who are in school 90% or more of the time simply perform better. Statistically, that it just makes a difference. And so I did put that in the communication component there. It may be easier to think about it as if a student is, you know, 2 days a month, that ultimately gets you to that 18 days over a school year, and really looking at that as kind of being the tipping point. So obviously we want kids here every day if we can, but we've got to be realistic in terms of, you know, their health and all kinds of other commitments that are going on. But I do think the more and more that we can spread the message that we need families to have their kids here, that is something that makes an academic difference. And finally, the last point that I did make on here is something I've referenced already, but we've tried to emphasize the idea of grit, or really that willingness to kind of overcome and persevere in the face of conflict and challenge, and wanting to communicate that to our families and continue to reiterate it to our kids, that that's one of the most important skills that they can walk away from, is that willingness to be able to continue to, you know, get up and work and work and work in the face of whatever challenge that it is. And that, again, there's a research base behind that now that really shows that that's something that ends up having academic success, which is great, but just life success in general. So thank you for just giving me the time today. I did want to just kind of share some of those highlights and asks that I think is something that the families and community will continue to hear, you know, as we're coming to the end of the year, and then again in the fall again, that really that I think we're going to continue to be asking more of kids in terms of their commitment to their schoolwork, and just letting them know that we're here, but we need them to meet us, and that we're ready.
Any questions from Ms. Howard about our grading practices, where we are, where we're going, or any comments regarding that? And it could be from parents, staff, or students.
Hi, my name is Megan. I have a sophomore student here. So are we continuing with the 90-10?
We are definitely going to be making a revision for next year.
Okay.
So all the feedback has been gathered through the faculty. I think one thing that is really important is understanding that the component of 90-10 that's also included in there is the final exam. So in most courses, we're talking about 15% of the 90. So ultimately, the biggest change would be in a larger component going towards that practice side of it. So I think, again, the goal is not to swing back completely the other way, but to be able to find that spot where we can re-engage students while still really wanting to emphasize that the best way for us to capture what they've really learned is through the assessment, because that's when we expect them to know it from. So one of the challenges and the problem with putting too much emphasis on grading the homework or the practice is they're learning it. So we don't want to be penalizing them because they're still in that learning stage, but we're definitely seeing that in terms of wanting kids to fully engage in that practice work, we're going to have to give something back to that side in order to try and hook them in on that.
Yeah, because I can tell you, my child says, "Why do I need to do it?" And I'll speak just in my house, doesn't see the value of the homework, doesn't realize that the practice gets you to the great final grade or demonstrates, what you can do. And that's how we all learn, is practice.
Yes.
And if that's not supported, and ultimately how is it all supported? Through a grade, right? Then we're kind of doing a disservice to our kids and saying, the only time you need to perform is at this point. And the work that you do preceding that doesn't have a lot of value. I think that's how it's interpreted in my house.
Yes, no.
So
I mean, I've had a house full of them myself, and my youngest is 20 now, and was still one of the worst offenders. So I definitely understand it. I think it's just going to be trying to find a way to give some without it being too much.
Yeah.
Is there a certain percentage of homework completion that is a prerequisite for a retake?
So every, and actually probably some of the teachers could speak to this better than I can. So I'll just tell you what it is overview, and maybe they can speak to it. But every division and every course team makes a decision on what the work is specifically for a student to do for a retake. What we're not wanting to have happen is that kids are just completing all of the homework prior because they already didn't complete it once. So what we're wanting the teacher to be able to make a decision on is what does the student need to do to be able to have this opportunity. But maybe if one or both of you could kind of speak to what that looks like in your subject area.
So there's not a prerequisite in terms of like a student comes to me and wants to retake a test and I say, sorry, you didn't complete enough of the homework, so you don't qualify. But we do go back and look at all of the practice and anything that was missing. Part of my policy is to review the original assessment so that I can really sit down with the student and talk about, okay, what was, let's see what seemed to be the most difficult for you. Let's go back and practice that. And now let's look at the work that was completed. If you're missing anything, let's make a list. These are all the things that you need to do. I typically have some like standard, additional practice activities as well for the student. So it's kind of by a case-by-case basis in world languages, but we for sure go back and look at that. But like Ms. Howard said, we're not necessarily saying like, okay, you need to complete 97 assignments, not that we assign that many, before you can come back and retake this. We try to choose the biggest things so that students can focus on the areas in which they're struggling the most, which is what we identify during that revision process.
Which also becomes one of the challenges. If the kids aren't meaningfully engaging in the assessment, then the teachers don't even have the information to know what the students do and don't know. So that's one of the reasons the initial assessment is so important, because that's kind of the diagnostic that's going to let us know, okay, you've already learned this, but this is what's left.
Yeah, I mean, my question just comes from the theoretical construct that if you've done the homework, you may not need the retake, because that's the practice. So
In theory.
In theory. And yeah, you might, because you might just mess up or have a bad day, as you alluded to, and things happen.
And there are, and also, I mean, I think one of the biggest intentions behind the whole idea of grading for equity is that kids learn at different rates. So you can do the work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've mastered it or internalized it, whatever. But obviously, yeah, they've got to be engaging meaningfully in the practice, or I mean, how can they learn anything?
Yeah. So I'll speak to science on that. We also have them review their tests as well. They all get to see their test once they're all put into the grade book. They see them hopefully within like a couple days only after actually taking the test, and they all have to self-reflect on that. And that's the same for all of the biology classes, not just mine. You know, it is something we do across the course team to make sure that it is a unique, or sorry, not unique experience for all the students, that it is homogeneous. So they do that, and then they also usually, it depends on the department, because yes, course teams do decide what's going to fit best for their content area, but for us, also having a review packet completed and showing that to the teachers to basically be like, you know, I did study for this material. Are there questions that we need to go through together that you didn't understand? Kind of a moment for the teacher and the student to walk up to each other. You know, I'm looking through, if one catches my eye, I'm like, you need to take a look at this one again. Make sure that you study that before you take that retake. And then we just kind of set it up for the student. But definitely could be something where we dive in a little deeper, see what strategies maybe do work the best for our students, maybe ask our students which of those strategies work for the best for them as well, so that we can make something that helps them get ready for a retake. But still, your concerns about like the homework and stuff, in my class in the first semester, I kind of do a mini lesson where I'm trying to teach them the value of the homework and show them how it shows up on the test. And for some students, that does work for them and they understand what I'm trying to talk about, and some students, because especially since I teach freshmen, it doesn't click the first time, and they don't understand that delayed gratification that like me doing practice now maybe 3 weeks before the test, how that's going to show up later. Some students like totally get that, and some students it doesn't make as much sense to them yet.
I think one thing, I had a couple thoughts, but one thing that my daughter or my son will say, I'll say, do you have homework? Nope. But they don't count a test or a project that's not due tomorrow as tonight's homework. So I think even as teachers during DEN or whenever you can, to say like, when your parents say, do you have homework, what they mean, so I tell my kids, what I mean is, do you have a test coming up in the next week? Do you have a project coming up? Is there a paper that needs to be written? That's what I mean. And that to kind of like backwards map, like when's the due date? Now let's chunk this out and not save it to the night before. Because one of my other points is, you know, my kids are in sports, and we got home last night from the track meet around 9:15 p.m. That's late, you know. So I asked her if she has homework. She said, yeah, but I don't know when I'm supposed to do it. So I think it's kind of hard to balance. Like you want them to go to sports and be in music and all these things. And then if every teacher's like, we're going to really push this homework thing, it's just like, how do you balance that? But I know in my school, we have work habits grades and we have content grades, because we don't want to say that you don't know, you're not good at reading if you just didn't do your homework, right? So I'm thinking I like the more than 10%, but I think it should be framed instead of just like homework as work habits. So that's where the grit comes in. That's where the persevering through academic problems comes in. And so the kids, there's like a rubric, just like for academics, but it's about work habits. So I can provide the ones that my school uses. I'm at an elementary school, but it transfers. It's grit, it's perseverance, it's solving academic problems, such as you didn't study for the test. Like, you can't just retake it. So anyway, the grades kind of are balanced between what they actually know academically and what their behavior is a separate part of it. So those are all my things.
Well, I appreciate that. We definitely went through some professional development that talked about the non-academic behavioral component of that, or grading that. And the concerns for us as a high school were the reality of being able to have 100, 150 students a day that you're going to track something like that with. How appropriate would the rubric be in terms of being standardized for students to be able to have that? And then we would definitely want that to be separate from the letter grade that they're getting that's going into their GPA. So I think for us as a large comprehensive high school, that became something that did not seem realistic to us. But I do think that the kind of metacognitive piece that you're talking about, whether it's breaking down what a long-term assignment looks like or what is studying or any of that, and the behavioral component, when we look at that panorama data, which again is that social emotional data, the kids do seem to be reporting very honestly like that those are not things that they feel strong at. You know, also the idea even of kind of like the self-efficacy component of that, like those are very big challenges in this kind of age group. But I do think that's something that we can revisit in terms of trying to kind of reteach those skills again. And I think what you said in terms of deferred gratification is part of just the whole brain development issue, that, you know, you've got some kids who are very, very academically motivated. And so those are the things that really appeal to them. And then I think, you know, the other thing I noticed in the notes from October, the idea of we're really trying to start looking at how can we support kids who are choosing a pathway other than college. Because we do know that there's a significant portion of our building doing that. That's something that is a very big push in the state, and that's some of the work that we've done in terms of pathways and looking at different areas in terms of education, manufacturing, looking at technology. There's some different areas to be able to do that, because obviously one of the issues is if you don't think what you're learning is valuable, it's gonna be almost impossible for us to convince you that it's something that you should invest in. And so I think part of this work also is continuing to be creating areas that kids are naturally engaged in and offering that as something for them to learn.
Before we move on from this topic, I do want to hear from our students, the ones who experience this grading scale every day.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Everybody kind of looked at me, so they know I talk the most. No, I'm just joking. But I like having the retake option for classes that are like heavy, like exam based. Like I know for Spanish, like that's just like the first example I thought of. I get graded on my homework, my participation, and then like my exam grades. So I think it kind of helps me like weigh like my grade more. But for a class like AP World, where if I get a B, a C, and a C, I don't have any homework to like balance my grade out, and now I'm down to like an 80, and I'm like, oh, that's not very great for me, you know, kind of thing. So I like having the idea of like, I mean, it's kind of excuse me, it's kind of like the skill, like you want homework because you want your grade to get better, but you don't want homework because sports and other commitments. Like, I don't want to be doing homework until 11 o'clock at night. I really don't. Past my bedtime, I should be sleeping by then, you know? So and kind of like test too, like studying for a test, like, you know, it's hard work put into learning and stuff. And like, yeah. So I wish, like at one end of the spectrum, I wish homework was a little more like, you need to do this because this is what homework will get you. But also like, I don't want to be staying up until like 11:30 at night doing homework, if that makes sense.
I'd say that I do think it's a good idea to maybe adjust the 90-10 grade scale, because I definitely do see a lot of kids who don't do the homework and then are always trying to take advantage of the retakes. But in terms of the comment made about we don't want to penalize students for the bad homework grades as they're learning, I think that if teachers grade homework more on a completion basis, seeing how much effort they put in rather than a correction basis, that might be more helpful. I think because the most important part about the homework isn't getting it right, it's just doing the practice, getting an idea of how to complete the assignments, how to reach the objectives. And I'd say that there is a very prominent issue with, especially like AP and honors kids see all the time, like they ask about the retake even before the day of the assessment, and I'm like, maybe if you just studied the first time, then you wouldn't have to do all that work the second time, especially for AP, because I do think it's supposed to simulate a college level experience, college level class, and in college you don't get those retakes. So I do think, I was talking with a teacher at one point, like maybe if there's a limit per semester for the amount of retakes, because we don't want to take that away completely, because we understand that there might be 1 or 2 bad days within a semester. But then again, like the cramming before an assessment and not actually learning is unacceptable. So I do think it's appropriate to maybe make the homework a larger part of the grade, and as well as to avoid the completing all the homework assignments just to do the retake. Maybe teachers are more strict about accepting late homework. I have like turned in homework after the due date in the past, but I do think it's just so much more helpful to the student and to the teacher if the student just completes the homework at the right time on the right date. And there definitely have been times that I have had to stay up like a little late after a game or something, but honestly most of the time it's because I procrastinate or don't manage my time well or spend too much time on my phone. Because I think the teachers at WeGo, they generally are very understanding about homework and timing and the extracurriculars that students have to do. And so I see several teachers give multiple days to complete a larger assignment, or if something is due tomorrow, they generally give a shorter assignment. So I do think it's definitely feasible for most students to complete the assignments on time. So I think maybe being more strict about that would be helpful.
Just to give you a little bit of feedback of where some of the rationale comes from, the issue with the grading of the homework and the completion, all of that, one of the things that we're trying to move away from is having kids feel like they're going to be graded on the homework, so they're going to copy the homework because they didn't do the homework, which just gets us back in the same position that we are right now. So it is so challenging to be able to kind of find that sweet spot that works so that we have kids engaging in homework and learning without overly penalizing like we were talking about. But yeah, you've definitely given it a lot of thought, whether you realized it or not in terms of the grading component.
Any other student contributions to that, Valeria?
I feel like we've been talking a lot about like the homework and the assessments and stuff like that. And the thing that you just brought up is how like the homework, they don't want to be penalized or whatever, but there's also like the idea of quizzes. I know for one of my classes I have quizzes, which has been, I feel like in that class it's helped me a lot to be prepared for the test, because although it's like my homework's not being penalized and like as a student athlete and stuff like that, I don't think I've ever turned in homework late, because again, teachers do give and are like very like lenient with homework. I don't think there's ever been like homework like, okay, you need to do it tonight. Sometimes occasionally here and there, yes, but I feel like they're always like very lenient in that way, and I feel like there's always time to get it completed, whether that's in den or sacrificing your lunchtime maybe a little bit, but I feel like there's always time to complete the homework. And then the idea of quizzes, I just wanted to bring it up because it's in AP Physics. We have the idea of quizzes, and I feel like that's helped me a lot because it's like a smaller portion of the grade, but it's like actually weighted, not like homework. And I feel like that seeing that like changing your grade kind of impacts like the students more, because like, oh, I really need to focus on this before the test comes. Yeah. And they see that impact on their grade, and it's better than like putting a more weight on homework than, as like it's been mentioned, that can have like penalties on their grade because they didn't have time, they had sports or they had clubs, extracurriculars. That way there's a quiz date leading up to the thing, and it's like to the objectives of the unit. That way it can prepare the students before the actual assessment, and it can kind of work like as a retake as well, because they're kind of assessed on those certain topics, like micro topics throughout the course, until they take the unit test. So it kind of can work like, oh, like review your quizzes before the test, which you kind of already got assessed on, and that way your test is kind of like a retake in a way. And I feel like that's what would be really helpful in like the higher levels, like the AP and the honors levels, especially how Sneha said in college we're not going to have retakes. So I feel like if it's an AP course, it should probably be more like a college course.
All right, well, good contributions from everybody on that. We appreciate it. If you've got time to do that survey, or if you want to reach out to Mrs. Howard directly with information on that, but there'll be some things coming in the future regarding some adjustments. Ms. Ashline, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say I scanned the QR code, but it said that it was only going to be like a view only, like I couldn't actually fill it out. Did anybody else try scanning it?
Okay.
Does that happen to you too?
Yeah.
So
it's definitely Mrs. Walker from Communications has been the one who's shared it previously, unlike me doing it here. So the one that she sends will be accurate.
Because both of us didn't remember receiving that
Yeah, it came out a few times. Actually, I think one of the last ones was right prior to parent-teacher conferences. But like I said, I do think that part of the issue was there were 500 responses ultimately, I think, with the principal
The other
survey, and I
survey.
think this one got, kind of
Okay.
lost in the mix.
We can send it to this group, a live link to this group tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And one more question.
Yeah,
Please.
May I ask, during then,
Yes.
how can the students be supported, especially the ones, if this changes in the future, the 90-10, how can that support be visualized on then, or how can students take advantage of this? Or not to say that they can be pushed to use that then time instead of procrastinating and leaving it to the last minute, but maybe, I'm not sure how is the picture of then during, because it's a whole period, right? If
No, it's half an hour, 4 days a week. 2 of those days are activity or lesson days, and then 2 are a study hall component where the kids can go to academic support. So I definitely would say encouraging them to ask the particular teacher the subject area that they need the help in to be able to go to academic support. But are you talking more just about in the classroom, maybe?
Depending on the support in the classroom, or if they're failing a grade, and instead of, doing all these retakes, maybe like those students who are being highlighted because of the many retakes that they might have to take, instead being referred to their then time to get that support, instead of, especially like students who are in many extracurricular activities, like music, sports, or they're just involved, or they even probably have a part-time job already that they might need that time. So I wasn't sure how then was really supporting or pushing those students to use that time for that.
That definitely has not been the structure thus far. And I also think that individual teachers have been looking at their own students and referring them to DEN, to academic support. So it's definitely something that we could think about if there was a structure that could make that happen. Please, no.
I teach a DEN class, and I teach sophomores I teach them social emotionally on 2 of the days, and then 2 of the days are a study hall, which I think you're referring to like supporting them more academically. Right now, it's kind of up to the DEN teacher. Some DEN teachers have different strategies where they pull the kids aside and they do a grade check with them like once a month. Some DEN teachers push the study hall like more of a studying, and some DEN teachers allow a little bit more free time. So right now, currently, it is sort of up to the teacher in the classroom, like what their structure is going to be on those study hall days. And what I'm hearing from you is you think it would be more beneficial, and I do agree as well, that like maybe there is an expectation that we're maybe not necessarily like one set way to do it, but we're kind of checking the boxes, like, have we done those grade checks with the kids? Like, are we having them put their phones away on study hall days, stuff like that, so that we can make sure that they're actually studying during that time and not just watching TikTok.
And then going back to, like, do you have a test within the next week? Do you have a paper due? Instead of just the, like, no, because my daughter has said that, like, well, then we don't really do anything. We're allowed to have our phones. So I think that if the focus was a little more about studying and homework, then you're kind of putting your money where your mouth is. Like, you want the kids to focus on it more, then let's give them some time during the day and make that sort of a little more of a push.
Okay. Maybe it can be 50-50 where they can decide where to implement or the lessons that teachers give, and maybe the other 50% just to make sure that they are getting that support, or maybe teaching them, procrastination is putting you here.
Sure, some more like study
Something
skills.
like this, yes.
Okay.
I like it. Well, what a great segue. Speaking of phones, let's go on to our next agenda topic. So I want to lay a little context before I turn it over to Ms. Witten and Ms. Furtado. Over a year ago, this group really started talking about phones, and we really started talking about how pervasive they were and the challenge of it in schools. And we were all over the place, but ultimately we came to a really good place, and we came up with the procedures that the school is using this year regarding putting phones away for bathroom passes and those procedures. And while, again, nothing is perfect, I really think that that work that this group did and those recommendations have put us in a really great position for where I think things are going in the state. So the next piece of work that you've got here, not work, but piece of literature you got here in your packet, is an article from the state legislature. The governor of Illinois is going to be he's proposed already, he will be asking for passage of essentially a cell phone ban policy for Illinois classrooms. So it's a long article. I encourage you to bring it home, look at it. I did highlight some really important points that I just want to take a second to go through because that'll give us the context for our conversation. So on the first page, you'll see that they're going to require all public schools in Illinois to adopt a wireless communication device policy to limit the use of personal devices during classroom instructional time. So essentially, it's going to ask all schools to have a system where kids can put their, essentially ban their personal cell phone use during periods with the following exceptions. So I'll turn the page. This is where it gets interesting. If there's an emergency or response to an imminent threat, when a teacher or instructor has authorized a student to use a wireless communication device for educational purposes, Chromebook use or technology use, etc. Remember, we all have Chromebooks here. When a licensed physician determines that the possession of a wireless device is necessary for health or well-being, to fulfill an IEP or 504, or if it is necessary for students who are English learners to access learning material. Then the last piece that I've highlighted for you is just to know the state really is already making the push, though, that they don't want this to become something with really punitive discipline. So if a kid is told, put your phone away, no, I won't do it, they don't want it to go through a progression of discipline where it ends up involving a school resource officer, probably any kind of exclusionary discipline, or anything else that would really create a bigger disruption than the cell phone itself. Does that make sense? So I will just say, as an administrator for 18 years, they want their cake and they want to eat it too. Schools, you have to have this policy, but you can't enforce it too hard. So what I say that a little tongue in cheek, but what it is, it's now a challenge for us to think about. So what does this look like? How do we do this in a way that's effective and consistent, but also not a jail? We don't want to turn it into a police state either. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Witten and Ms. Hurtado to just talk through some of the what and some of the how, and then hear thoughts from this group about how some of this can look, assuming that this legislation passes, which at this point we assume that it will.
So in October, when we met, we gave everyone an update on how the cell phone practices that we had implemented this year had been going, and we heard a lot from the teachers and the students who, for the most part, reported things were going really well. Like, students were more engaged in classes. There wasn't, when they were doing group projects or collaborative learning, more of the students were involved. There wasn't, a certain group of students on their phones. So that was really good to see. And overall, I can say that that has remained. At the end of semester one, we kind of saw things starting to slip a little bit, so we really pushed our teachers at the start of the second semester to reteach the students the cell phone practices that were going to be happening in their classrooms. It was a good time for some of the teachers to adjust and make changes to how cell phones were handled in their classrooms. So I think overall, it's gone really well putting our cell phones away during that time. And so now looking at what's coming out, last year when we implemented the bathroom passes and things like that, we made a video over the summer, we pushed it out, we sent notices to parents. I think it would be a good idea to start kind of sending this information out now before the summer comes around, because I'm worried that with the summer, like, some people are going to miss it, people are not going to see it, students might not see it, and I kind of want to push it out now to the students, push it out now to the parents, make sure that the incoming freshmen understand. Now, the advantage to freshmen is most middle schools do have a pretty strict policy, and it's easier to enforce it there because there's not as much freedom in a middle school. So they're already coming with better habits anyway with their phones. So I think that would be kind of good for us to continue to enforce that for the incoming freshmen. But I wondered, I was hoping to get feedback here from the best way to communicate that with parents, with students, maybe get some feedback from both parent and student groups. And then in terms of, you know, we have to have this policy, but then no consequences. I'm going to have Ms. Hurtado talk a little bit about this year. We have not had a lot of students. I can probably list those students pretty quickly that we have had issues with cell phones, and kind of how we've handled it this year, which will likely be how we handle it next year.
Yeah, I would say, oh, that's really close. I would say that, yeah, I would agree. There's not a ton of kids that we've had it escalate to the point of then us trying to be like, oh, we run out of options. Because for the most part, we get to a point where now we can all agree on the fact that like the phone is being disruptive, right? So right now, if there's an issue in the classroom, typically it's addressed by the teacher first. So the teacher will address it with the student, maybe stay after with them, or just kind of like redirect them continuously. If then it continues to be an issue, for the most part, it's like, let's call home, they let the parents know, hey, it's becoming an issue, it's disruptive in the class, they're not paying attention, it's now impacting their grade. If it continues to be an issue after that, then typically that's where the referrals begin. And so then we get a referral sent to our office saying like, hey, the student has their phone out, they've received multiple warnings, they've received parent phone calls, and it's still not changing the behavior. The amount of referrals, I would say, are very small that we've gotten specifically for cell phones. And then typically when it gets to us, we also then speak with the student. Sometimes it stops there. Like all it takes is for them to be like, all right, this is serious. Now they're sending me to the office. A few of them are like, let me just push it a little bit more. Let's see what else can happen. And so at that point, we have had parents come in because at that point we're like, well, if it's becoming so much of an issue, then let's have your parent come in and see if they agree with the fact that you want to have your phone in class. And that typically is where it does end. We haven't had situations where now it goes beyond that and we have someone completely refusing to turn in their phone. But I agree. I think that it's really important that we start sending this message out now, because if there are students who are going to have a hard time separating from their phone, because there is still a little bit of flexibility right now, right? There's some teachers where like, okay, on this day, you're fine keeping it in your backpack. On test days, everyone needs to turn it in. And so then if it becomes a thing where everyone has to pull it out of their backpack and turn it into the teacher, there are some students that are very attached to their phone. Like, for example, like we even have our in-school suspension room. You have to turn in your phone when you're suspended. You have to walk in, turn in the phone. All the kids somehow forget their phones, you know, when they show up to suspension. And they're like, I don't have it. My parents took it. I'm like, oh, okay, let me just call your mom real quick and like confirm that she's got your phone. Oh, just kidding. Here it is, right? So like, it's definitely one of those things where it's going to be a battle, I think, at the beginning. So if we can try to get kids to understand that before starting the school year, we can have those strategies in place for teachers. We already kind of identify some of the kids where it might be an issue. And I don't know, we can kind of tackle it a little bit earlier. But
do you anticipate a change to what the current policy is that you're talking about communicating and pushing out in light of the?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to.
I'm sorry, do you mean a change to the what's in this article from the state?
Well, just like you're talking about wanting to send the policy out, is that policy looking new and different from what the current policy is?
It would be new and different in that right now it's at the teacher's discretion the extent to which they want to limit the cell phone usage. But because everybody has to have a system for exchanging a bathroom pass, the majority of our teachers have that system of, okay, go ahead and put it on the wall. I will say a lot of our veteran teachers who are really good, they know that they can say, hey, leave it in your bag, in your pocket. I don't want to see it. But that's okay. As we really looked at this policy proposed policy from Illinois, I don't think that meets the intent of the legislation. I think the legislation is really asking for a storage mechanism every day unless there's an educational purpose for that phone. So kids, I'm looking at you, 7 times a day, every class period, you're putting it on that wall hanger or in that clear plastic bin, whatever your teacher might have that period. So it is a little bit different in that regard. Now, the good thing, I think, and again, I thank this group quite a bit, it's not that far a leap from where we are. A year and a half ago, this would be a big jump, and we would have kids melting down right now. But I think we're close, if that makes
Without
sense.
fully reading the article, does it specifically reference in class time, so students would still be free during passing periods?
Yes,
To use
yes.
them
And I think
during
that
lunch?
acknowledges the high school aspect of it. We can't enforce 2,000 kids every day, every passing period. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, is how extensive, I think is the right word, is this policy? Like, I was going to ask about, like, lunch. Like, am I actually allowed to have my phone out at lunch? Like, is this, like when I think of phone ban, I think of, like, oh, you need to put your phone in the pocket and you don't get it for the rest of the day. And I'm like, no, my phone. But, but also, like, during, like, class time, if I have, like, independent work time, am I allowed to pull it out, put an AirPod in, listen to my music, then put it away? Oh, crap. And, like, am I allowed to, like, do something like that? Or is it like it needs to stay up until the bell rings, like 10:29, third period ends? Like, is that when it needs to, like, until it, like, the bell rings, is that how it needs to be?
So let me just summarize. What you're saying is very relevant. Right now, you probably have that autonomy and that level of freedom in a lot of your classes, right? And that's good. And one of our goals as a school is to release control to you guys as you get older and as you're ready for more and more responsibility. One of the challenges, though, with this is there are pretty clear lines and pretty clear expectations in this policy for it to be statewide. And for it to be effective and to do it for a whole school of 2,000 kids, it can't be like, wow, my third hour teacher kind of lets me do this, and my eighth hour teacher doesn't let me do that. It's got to be consistent. Otherwise, it's not fair to our teachers. Because then the folks who are holding the line, and you guys know how mean Miss Nelson can be. But when she's holding the line really hard, but the next teacher in your day isn't, you're going to come back to her and say, this isn't fair. And I don't want it to have to be a period by period enforcement. We got to be the same wall to wall. And that's got to be, it's a way, unless I have a very specific educational purpose. But I'll be honest, you guys all are provided a great Chromebook, and we will fix it for you quick if it breaks. There's nothing that you can do on a phone that you can't do on a Chromebook. So, yeah, I think I envision very few scenarios, wipe away the tear, I see that, where that phone would need to come out.
Well, I am very much in favor of this policy. Calling it a ban, though, is hard. I think restriction is probably an easier word for them to swallow or something. But as you know, Dr. Dwyer, we spoke about this a few years ago. I addressed the school board. I wasn't happy that some teachers were allowing it and some weren't, because I thought you have to have consistency, and it wasn't fair to put that on the teachers. So I'm very happy about this, and I think you should communicate it as soon as you can and, get the students and everybody used to the idea.
I do want to thank you, Ms. Weber. You have been pushing this, and we've had great conversations.
Yes, we
and
have.
I think without those, we're not where we are today.
Oh.
So I appreciate it.
The article has a lot of great quotes that don't make it seem so negative, like healthy boundaries around cell phone use in classrooms will have a positive impact on their mental health. And their, just talks about helping students achieve their full potential by fostering a healthy and productive classroom environment. So I think it can be framed like someone said, like the word ban is like a little much, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. But I think at first, if people see ban, they're going to think immediately like, I can't use it for lunch, I can't use it for the hallway. But I think it's just, if it's a focus on the classroom and the learning environment, and we're talking about grit, like if my teacher gives us study time and I can pull out my phone, I know my own son has said, like, I just look at my phone. But if it's not an option, I do think that will feed the let's work a little bit harder on studying, because if I'm not checking my socials and all that, then I might just actually, okay, fine, I'll do my work. So I think the two things we were talking about today, this and getting kids to care more about their schoolwork, will go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all seen, viral videos of kids who have recorded teachers or other kids in the classroom because they had their phone. And I know feedback from my own kids
in regards to what WeGo has done has been really very positive in terms of like kids who might not have otherwise normally engaged in class are engaging because there is no fear of permanent retribution. Like, I'm not going to say something that someone's going to video and then put on TikTok later on because I feel safe. I feel protected and I can say what I want and have discussions, and people are more engaged. People aren't constantly checking and, doing other things. So, I also support moving forward. Good luck. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but I think it will be in the best interest of our kids. And I just wanted to make a comment, Sneha. I really applaud you for being honest and saying, I take responsibility for the fact that I don't always manage my time, because that's a really mature and hard thing to admit, where kids will come home and it's 9:00 and they'll say, oh, it's so late, I can't do homework. But then they stay up till 11 scrolling on Instagram. So good, kudos to you for being able to admit that.
I think the last most important thing we need to hear is from kids, how do we message this? How do we roll this out so that, we get the proper amount of buy-in?
No, I'm just joking. But I would den. I mean, okay, as much as I knock den activities sometimes, because for my den, sorry, they don't, I know a lot of my den kids hate it and whatever, but announcements in den is something that we always do, something I've always had interest in, hearing about rock climbing club, just climb the highest wall, like, yay, rock climbing club, stuff like that. But tell the kids, this is something important you need to listen to, and this is what's going to happen. And I think since it's about something we care so deeply about, like the little phone in your pocket, I think a lot of kids will listen to it. And I think rolling it out in den, having your den teachers, having even like your core teachers, like a Spanish teacher or a science teacher, like say, hey guys, like really quick, like before class starts, I just want to let you know this is happening next year. Like, get used to it, because you can't really change that, everything's changing. So I would think like den or having like a core teacher, like definitely put it out there, because I think that'll help kids really recognize like, wow, like this is really happening. Because I feel like a lot of kids also don't read their email as much as they think they do. Like I just get spam emails like, this college wants you to apply in this college. I'm like, well, no thank you. But so I think telling them face to face in person would definitely be a big idea.
Valeria.
Yeah, I for sure agree. Probably not like in the nonsense in den, because those aren't enforced for all den teachers, right? If I'm correct to say during den, because I know mine doesn't. But maybe like as like she said, like the teachers are kind of enforcing it little by little. I feel like if they start enforcing it now, kind of saying like, oh, if they see a student out with like their phone, be like, oh, well, next year you won't have it. So that way like the students can start like kind of like visualizing or like seeing what the process will be next year. I feel like will for sure be helpful. But I feel like it's not going to be that big of a jump, because I think like more than half of my classes I put my phone away. So I feel like a lot of the classes currently I don't even have my phone during den. Already enforce that policy of you put it either in the shoe, or the shoe pocket, the shoe rack, or like on a box or in front of the classroom or something like that. So I feel like it's not going to be that big of a jump, but like the teachers kind of like slowly bringing it into the students will for sure be helpful. And then just probably like make an Instagram or TikTok, and everyone will know about it in like a second. That's what I'm
All right.
Repost will go crazy.
All right. Well, good, guys. We appreciate it. This is, one thing we always, whenever I have conversations with teachers, go ahead. Yep, please. Yep.
She just wanted to say something. Okay, so estás de acuerdo con la póliza? So she's agreement with the policy that is coming through. Algo más que decir.
Pues sí, o sea, estoy de acuerdo.
If it's a good thing for the young people, then that needs to be pushed.
I do think it is. It is for the best of everybody. It really is, for students, for staff, for the whole school. Whenever I talk to students about their phones, they always say, we know we're on them too much. We don't know how to get off. And so this is a way to help that. Good. All right.
Well, I was thinking too, just really quick to add, those suggestions are good for the student aspect of it, but I was thinking in pushing it out to the parents and kind of doing some videos where we can talk to the parents not only about the policy, but I have 3 kids, and shockingly, my youngest one requires a lot more boundaries, but I have never had to use like the parent features where you automatically put downtime on the iPhone, because my other 2 were like, oh, we can't use our phone after whatever time. And my youngest pushes that line, so I had to put that on the phone. And so I came to work the next day, and I'm like, Janet, guess what? So I'm like telling her about this feature, and I'm like, I'm sure a lot more parents would want to know how that works. So maybe talking and sharing with the parents of like the different features that that you as a parent can put on your child's cell phone, because oftentimes when we talk to parents about kids who are struggling with their phones, the parents are like, well, I don't really know what to do because they need a phone because I work late, and so I don't want them at home without a phone, but I don't know how to like limit it. So I'm like, well, my son cannot open any app on his phone after 9 p.m. He can only call and text me, my husband, his dad, and his grandma. Like, those are the only people he can text after 9 p.m. Everything else shuts down. So maybe sharing some of those features with parents so that they can also like join us in creating healthy boundaries with cell phones, I think would be a good idea too.
Parent workshop.
So I worked at a different school before where they did do a full school rollout of a cell phone restriction where it was kind of uniform and we all got the shoe racks and kind of like did that. One thing that they did right before actually enforcing the policy is they sent out a survey to students that they completed during that school's den time, and it asked the students why they were using their phones during class. Like, if you use your phone during class, what are you doing? And the reason they sent out that survey was to like provide different resources so that they were getting it from something other than their phone. So like some students are like, oh, I'm listening to music. So then they started like asking teachers to play more music in their classroom and in the hallways. Most of the time the thing on the phone was like for fun, but the only thing that they discovered that shocked them from the survey was a large number of students said that they were translating for their parents through their phone. And so then that's something that they realized they needed to up that resource for the community because they didn't know sometimes that that is actually what they were doing. So could be something we do during Den if it is something we could do, just to like see what could be good for our students and or their families or even just like their social emotional well-being. They just want to hear some music.
We're going to transition on to agenda item number 7, parent engagement.
So we have a new position this year, the Family Outreach Coordinator. And so she has been working with a lot of families that have a lot of outside of school needs, such as housing insecurity, food insecurity, other kinds of basic needs that families in our community need. And she's been great. She was formerly worked at District 33, so she knows the community, she knows the families. It's been great. And something that she brought an idea with her here that they do at District 33 was parent cafes. So she ran one earlier this month, one in Spanish and one in English, and it was basically groups of parents sat at small tables. She had different topics, different questions, so parents were able to hear from each other. It went really well. The turnout wasn't super great, but I mean, the people that went there liked it. It was a pretty good turnout. So it is something that she hopes to continue to do. And when we met in October, we had talked about maybe doing some of these parent engagement things on Zoom. So that is something that I talked to her about next year, maybe trying to do something like that on Zoom. And I know Ms. Howard was also considering doing a grading session on Zoom as well, but somehow the year kind of just got away from all of us. So that's something that we're going to try and implement next year. So I am moving into a new role next year, but that family outreach coordinator, that position is going to remain. And so just kind of wanted to get some ideas or feedback on topics for parents, thoughts on parent cafes, thoughts on Zooms, thoughts on, pre-recorded videos, things like that, ideas.
Well, just sometimes, when it comes to time or, those type of things, and sometimes I think as parents and busy lives, we know this is a diverse school, so maybe the parent cafes, if they can have a session in English and one Spanish, because sometimes having both, it extends the time, and sometimes that kind of like a little discouraging for us to attend sometimes because just of the time that it takes. Just an input.
Yeah, we usually do them separate. We don't usually do them together. The only times that Dr. Dwyer and I have done things together is for like quick basic things. So at the beginning of this school year, we did the cell phone thing together, but it was because it was an optional session. It was just kind of more of a, do you have any questions? Here's the policy. But typically we do a Spanish session and an English session for every open house, any parent session that we do. I also run our BPAC here, which is the Bilingual Parent Committee, and we have 4 meetings a year, and those are run 100% in Spanish. And then this parent cafe that the family outreach coordinator ran, she did 1 day in Spanish, and then the next day was in English. And typically, our Spanish parent events are more well attended, which obviously makes sense because percentage-wise, we do have more Spanish speakers than English speakers. So percentage-wise, it's probably, that makes sense. But I know like Lombard has a parent series and they run it live one day, and then the next day I think they do the recording at like 12 or something like that. So I wondered if that was something that our community might have interest in.
One thing I can think of, because I want to get help for my son with this, is executive functioning skills / organization. How do you help your child with that? I didn't have to help my other 3 children with that, but with him I do. So I was actually going to seek out professional help for that. So if we had someone come talk about that.
You envision it being like in person, with your child, without your child?
I don't think he would participate.
Okay. No, thank you.
Say without.
In person?
Yeah, in person or Zoom. I mean, yeah. Because I'm just realizing how important that is, and I don't know, there's other parents that struggle with that, but I think okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something about those babies of the family.
Yeah, I guess so.
I have a question, regarding, when you say recordings, are you talking about like lessons or stuff like that for the parents?
Yeah.
Have you guys implemented any?
We've never done it here, and so that's what I was wondering, if it is something that would be worth trying.
Because I know my mom's always sending me videos about things she sees, so I feel like that would probably have a good outcome. If you guys post those on a certain basis, because I feel like my mom wouldn't have time to join a Zoom call or come in person, but I know on that downtime that she has, or she's scrolling on Facebook or whatever, she's always sending me videos about educational stuff. So I feel like that would be a better way to reach a broader audience.
I was just going to bring that up. Good thing that you did, because my mom has, as much as she says she has free time, she has no time to do anything. So I think having a recording at work played in the background, listen. She likes to listen to podcasts while she works too, make breakfast, listen to how to help your kid have organization skills. I think it would be beneficial for a lot of parents, like Valeria said, a lot of parents who don't have necessarily the time to join in on a Zoom or to come in person. So I think that would be a really good idea, just because my mom wants to be more involved, but she never has the time to.
I think if those sessions could be broken down, like if it's an hour-long presentation, if you could block out like 4 15-minute chunks so that somebody could commit to 15 minutes to, I listened to this part, then, you look at something and think, I don't have an hour, but I have 7 minutes.
Yeah.
That they could be chunked out.
Make them on demand, because the Glenbard series has the
Yeah.
evening one, and who can watch a video at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? You can't, and I've asked, and they said, no, you have to watch it at noon or, so if it's on demand, and even, if it's on
Yeah,
demand.
just like catalog it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the Miami University where Lauren's going, they have all these parent information series, and they always do them live, and then within 2 weeks, they transcribe them for people who might want a written version of it, and then they just have literally a running Google Doc that all the live links to all the presentations, and you can go and watch any of them at any time.
I think that would be a good idea because an example for that, I think that it's my mom, because she wanted to know how am I, how good am I doing in school, but she can't come through in the meetings because she's not here with me. And so I think that the Zoom presentations would be a good idea for my mom or my parents. Yeah.
Any other ideas about possible workshops that we can look to implement next year? Meg?
I think I talked about last time, the conversation from the children to the parents, what they want us to know, because we're always telling them what we want them to do and what we want them to know, but how are they interpreting it? And because I saw a article, it's talking about social media and all the problems with social media, and really that's a consequence of, not a consequence, can't think of the right word right now, but it's more of a symptom of what the real issue is, maybe not having that connection. And so if we can hear from the kids, and because sometimes we can't hear from our own kids, what they want us to know, what's going on that, maybe they have, I know they have the trusted adult, but just in a more general conversational type of, thing. Real direct.
This is good. It's a very good starting point and a lot of good information for next year. I want to transition into agenda item 8 and 9. I think these are, I just want to take some celebration opportunity on this next one, number 8. So this idea of meal distribution as a school really got its start here in this group. And one of the things we did, we started working with West Chicago Food Bank, and then we were a little bigger than what they were prepared for. So it kind of fell through, so they weren't able to help in the way that we hoped they could. So as a school, as a district, and our Board of Education really decided, hey, this is something that we just need to not try to piece together through the goodwill of outside organizations. Let's invest and commit to it. So I wanted to give you guys this chart right here that you see, which is in blue and red. It says holiday meal distribution. So just to give you a little bit of context, Thanksgiving break, we passed out 440 meal packs, and each meal pack had about four, I think it was 4 meals in it, for a total of 1,760 meals distributed, and it cost a little over $11,000. We did the same at winter, although I think my numbers are off because we did it twice at winter. So we did, so actually double that winter number because we had 2 distributions. And then at spring break, that just was here, we did 600 meal packs for 2,400 meals for a total of just over $15,000. So we gave out, actually, I'll do my quick math here. We gave out almost, 6,400 meals for about $50,000 to our community this year. So it's a really great and something that we're going to continue to invest in and add as something that we regularly do. Because as we looked at, especially too, when I saw the need and saw that we gave out 440 meals at Thanksgiving, and we probably could have given out more, and we've upped it. It needs to be a regular investment, not something that a volunteer group is every season trying to cobble together. So I want you to know that that idea from this group, it led us to a large need, and that large need has now become part of what we invest in. So we just wanted to make you guys aware of that and have a celebration. Again, hope you guys recognize while sometimes our meetings can be long and the work can seem slow, it really does make a difference. And a lot of what's come out of this group has come to action. So thank you. Thanks for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there for all of the passing out, and
It's one of my favorite days.
yeah, on the Thanksgiving one, a lot of the kids were like, "Wait, what is this?" And everyone was super confused, and they were like, "Oh no, I'm good." I'm like, "Just take it if you have siblings," like, because it was like chicken nuggets and like fruit snacks and like a bunch of stuff in there. I'm like, "Just take it. I promise your mom will say thank you," because kids eat all the time. So then when winter break came around, like the kids were looking for it, like so a bunch of people took it, and I think maybe at Thanksgiving, the confusion, maybe a little bit of stigma, but then after that, like, everyone was like running for the bags, so.
And I gotta say, one of the things I'm most proud of, one in the school, we're not checking IDs and do you prove need. It's if you need food, you need food, and we're gonna give it to you. But we've handed out all these meals, and you and I have been there for all of it. I have not seen a single moment of a student saying something or belittling another or any kind of negativity associated with it at all, which I think it's a testament to the school and to the kids and just to their heart and ethos that they bring to it every day. So that's something we're going to keep doing and do bigger, probably. So yeah, more food, more
Can
better.
students also be part of it and participate in the distribution process or the packing process, or no?
So we just do it at the end of the day, like as the kids are leaving, they just come and grab it. So it's not really like a lot of manpower necessarily.
We've gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah. And we just like wheel them out. The Quest, who is our food, like
Food service company.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they pack them and they freeze them and put them in bags, and yeah.
It would be so much work for a group of non-professionals to make 50,000 meals. So it's great to use our food service company, and they've been with us a long time, and they give us a good deal on it. And so it really is kind of a shared effort. And I hear about maybe the kids helping. I got to tell you, the administrative team, we love doing it. So it's almost one of those, like we almost like doing it ourselves. It's kind of our little reward at the end of, right before a break. So we're a little selfish in that regard. All right, our next topic before we get to our end here is attendance. This is really an update. So what I've provided for you here, I've given you an update of where we're at in regards to chronic absenteeism. So as a reminder, chronic absenteeism is if you miss 10% or more of the school year for any reason whatsoever. So it doesn't matter if you were called in sick for 18 days. So if you've missed 18 days, and what we have for this current year, it's 10% of the current days. This is as of Friday. So it's not 18 days, as of April. It's just 10% of what we've attended so far. So I want to point out a couple of trends, but also get a little input from you guys. It continues to be something that we struggle with, and it's something that all schools are still struggling with. As Ms. Winton alluded to, we added a family outreach coordinator this year, and she has worked very intensively with dozens of families. Attendance is a struggle for them, and that we've seen some results, but that's intensive work, and it can only happen for so many families at one time. So really quickly, for this current school year right now, there's a trend that's happening this year that's happened every year. Our freshmen are at 28.8% chronically absent. So that's not a great number. We don't love that. But as I look at the last 3 school years, our freshmen have had a pretty high number. But something that's been good that I do want to point out, if you look at last year's freshmen in 23-24, 31.8% of them are chronically absent. This year as sophomores, 22.6%. Looking at 22-23, 24% of those freshmen were chronically absent. Sophomore year, 21%. So this phenomenon of the freshmen coming in, not having the best attendance, and then getting significantly better their sophomore year, that's a trend that's continuing. So it tells me our efforts are working, but we want them to work more. So we're trying to figure that piece of it out. I do see too, though, as you'll see in green, our 12th graders, and this is a statewide trend, 12th graders are the most chronically absent cohort in the entire state of Illinois. Part of that is some of them, they get to 18, they can call themselves in, and some of them do.
Don't tell my son. He does not know
No,
that.
Peter has no idea. This isn't recorded. Peter, turn it off. But some of them call themselves in, or some of them, they are being very selective of, I know exactly what classes I have to pass to graduate. I know exactly what I have to do, and they are deciding to maybe walk across the finish line and not sprint across it. So that's a different challenge. We have gone to a method this year. We're sending a lot of individualized mail home. This is your kid. Here's how many excused absences. Here's how many unexcused. Here are some supports. So everybody got that letter at the end of semester one, the whole school community. And now we've been targeting different groups. But we are, as always, all ears on other ideas, other strategies to incentivize and really improve the attendance for all of our students, not just those who struggle with it.
I think it's hard to like say like, oh, you're chronically absent, but like I get sick so often. Like, so I think it's kind of hard to be like, we need to solve chronic absentee, but you can't really solve like the cold. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I feel like giving them a little slack, you know. I missed a day of school because I was dying in my bed. So yeah, just giving people a little slack. But I also like that you guys send text messages because my mom's always on it.
Good.
Like today, she texted me, she's like, you missed Den. I was like, whoa, like they're supposed to fix my attendance.
You were in a meeting with me,
I was
it's
with
okay.
Dr. Dwyer. You can call him up and ask Dr. Dwyer. So yeah, I think it's a good system of having that, like to be like, oh yeah, your kid's not in school. So yeah.
I will say this year was the first year that we really enforced attendance for social events. So there had always been, if you have too many tardies, you could potentially not go to prom. So we did it with homecoming this year, and it wasn't just tardies, because then what the kids were doing were like, oh shoot, I'm going to be tardy, I'm getting close to the tardy, I'm just not going to go to that class because they're not looking at attendance. So that one kind of backfired. So now we are looking at tardies, we're looking at how many class periods they have missed, unexcused, and then how many full days were unexcused. So there was 3 different targets for homecoming, and this was the first year that I did hold the line. So there was like, I think 2 or 3 kids that I was like, nah, you're not coming. I'll send you a refund. They were not happy. A lot of parents called, were unhappy, but really the point was, and I told all of those kids that were not able to come, is I need you to communicate with us. Like, what's going on? Are you struggling? Are you working? Is something going on in your family that you're not coming? If you're communicating with us and we know what's going on, then we can kind of work out a plan. So now we've been doing the same thing with prom. I sent out a bunch of information, put big signs by the window where they buy their prom tickets. Like, if you don't meet this criteria, do not buy a prom ticket without talking to your dean first. Some kids did buy a prom ticket. It ended up, I mean, how many kids bought tickets?
That shouldn't have.
No, how many actually bought tickets?
642. Record
So,
number
I
of
know.
prom goers this year, everybody.
So
Everybody
out
had
of all
fun.
of those kids, we had, I think, like 17 that didn't meet the attendance criteria. So I sent them a message and said, hey, you shouldn't have bought a ticket. You didn't talk to your dean. Make an appointment to come see them. And then the kids that are getting close, like, hey, you're getting close. I know you bought your prom ticket, but I will refund you if you don't make the cutoff before prom. So the deans have been meeting with those students who didn't meet their criteria all week, and the kids that were way beyond, we had them bring in a parent with them to meet with the deans. So just, again, really, like, the point is that we need you communicating with us. We need your family here telling us what's going on. Let's make a plan. So that's been, I think, pretty effective. A few of the kids were like, oh, we didn't think you were, like, actually gonna check. So
They did.
One of the things that really, I think made a big change last year in Lehman, that parents, and I'm talking as a parent, we didn't really like, I think they started this thing where if a student was late or absent, they get messages directly to their phones saying your student is late, your student is starting, your student is absent, in the class. Many parents didn't like getting all those messages through the day, because I know we have Power School, we have the app to check and see, if our student is absent, and then we get a phone call, I think, either at the end of the day, if I'm not wrong, when our students are absent. But I know it might not impact seniors who are 18, probably, I don't know, but that's one strategy that they use that I didn't like one when I have to
This year we implemented if your kid misses first, second, and third period, you'll get a message during den that says your kid has not reported to school yet. So because we did hear the same feedback, like if a parent gets the phone call at the end of the day and the kid's like, no, I swear I was there's no one at the school that they could call. So if you haven't come to school first, second, and third period, you get that call, which for a lot of parents is like, oh, thanks for the reminder, I forgot to call them in. But for other kids, it's like, or other parents, they would call and say, nope, I dropped them off. They should be there. So we did do that. We do have the ability to send a message every single time your kid doesn't go to a class period. However, it's a little complicated here at the high school because kids go to their social workers, their counselors. Oftentimes they don't go to den because they're going to academic support. There's like all of these other places that kids could be, and oftentimes the social worker or counselor or even the dean's office will adjust the attendance in the middle of the class period. So then the parents would get a call, why aren't, so that made it a little bit trickier for us to do that. I know Dr. Dwyer and I were exploring the option of the tardy notification. So when a kid would scan in for a tardy pass, that you would get a text that says your child just got a tardy pass, so that you would know how many times your kid's tardy in a day or how often they're tardy in the week. But I think we would have to purchase a whole other system. So we're not necessarily there, but it's definitely something that the dean's office has been talking about.
I think a lot of what you do with prom and all those things are punitive, and that works sometimes. What about flipping the script in terms of coming up with ways to incentivize? And so you would know month to month, if kids are on track to meet that standard, because you want to avoid, if you're sick, you gotta stay home, right? Nobody wants you here if you're really sick, but I don't think, Olivia, you're the problem. It's kids who are sick and stay home, but then also stay home lots of other days too. But, so you incentivize kids that you're on track, you've met this percentage of attendance, and then we do monthly raffles, and we do, and maybe one of the big things is you're giving away 5 prom tickets, and you can only be in that raffle if you have attended so many days, or you've met that benchmark every quarter, or whatever it is, or, raffle tickets for Starbucks or Dunkin's gift cards, or just different things that might.
Free day.
I did look at a couple of schools that did that over the last couple of years, because obviously since COVID, a lot of schools their attendance has dropped, and almost every school that did incentive programs, their attendance dropped. So I don't know I don't know what it is with that. So for me, like I said, it's more of I don't not want the kids to go to prom. I want to go to prom. I have to go. I don't have a choice. But also I do like going, and I like seeing the kids in that environment. And so I really want them to go. Really what it is that it prompts the kids to be like, oh, you're paying attention. Oh, I have to communicate with someone about what's going on. Then the family has to come in because they want their child to go to prom as well. So I think what I have noticed in the 3 years in this role, the most effective intervention is being able to sit down with the student and with the family to figure out what's going on, what do you guys need, how can we help you? I think that's what goes the longest way. It's just, we have over 2,000 students, and to be able to do that with every single kid is so hard. So I feel like doing these social consequences has opened the door for us to have more of those conversations. And I think that's more effective. But I know we did look at doing something like that, even with, we talked about the dens. I think we talked about that in October, or maybe it was at the end of last year, of doing like rewards for the dens that had the best attendance and things like that. But when I looked at other schools, they were saying that and even just data in general, not even specific schools around here, they said that it negatively impacted attendance when you do rewards.
Challenge, what a lot of schools were finding was you were incentivizing the kids who were going to be coming no matter what. And then you were rewarding them. And then what it didn't let you figure out who are the kids who are struggling to come for reasons beyond their control. And then who are the kids who the incentive is not coming to school. And how do you separate that? So Veronica, to her credit, has really tightened up a lot of the just procedures so we can then more narrowly focus in on there's a challenge with your family, how can we support it to get you to school, or you have something going on right now that you just want to be at home, what kind of services can we inject into that situation to try to get you comfortable coming back to school? Yeah. So, yeah, good. Yes, that's the big one, right? Yeah, yeah, good.
I have a question.
Please.
I know there, like those mental health days, are those still something that's available to students? Okay. And are those like a part of like excused or unexcused? Because
They're excused.
Okay, so
But they still count toward chronically absent.
Yes.
Yeah.
they still count.
They still
okay.
count. Yeah.
But for prom and homecoming, it doesn't count. For prom and homecoming, I'm only looking at unexcused absences. So if your mom calls you in because you were sick, if you took a mental health day, those don't count. These are like no one called you in.
So this includes excused absence as well. So are those like field trips and stuff as well?
No, field trips wouldn't count. Field trips
Field trips wouldn't count.
Field trips don't
Okay,
count
okay.
against this number at all. Yeah.
All right,
Those are good questions. Yeah. The way the state calculates absenteeism, truancy, all that, it's very complicated. It doesn't always make sense. I'll be the first one to say that. So, all right. Ongoing struggle. I will say, since our last meeting, we did have a school that is nearby, looks a lot like us. They will remain nameless. And they said, hey, we're a high school. We look like you guys. Your attendance is way better than ours. What are you doing? And we said, oh, well, this feels pretty good. All right, thanks. So we shared it. I have no idea if it helped. So, all right. Last topic, quickly. This is a great time to just put some future topics, get them in the minutes for the next time this group comes together next school year. And that kind of starts the groundwork of what the committee will discuss next year. So I'll open it up to the floor. Something tells me attendance will still be on the agenda.
We have to go back to the cell phone policy.
Maybe just to combat some of the challenges that we're talking about, kids who want to be actively engaged in lots of activities and then are running short on times. I mean, I know when I was in high school, we had study tables, and we didn't start practice until after everybody did 20 minutes of mandatory study tables, and then you could dive into practice. And I know that's going to require some commitment from coaches, and they may have to give up a little bit of like active practice time, but maybe that's hey, you're still in the mindset of school, you're still here, you haven't gone home yet, everybody get your stuff out, do study tables, then we'll start our activities for the day. That might just help to alleviate some of that stress of oh gosh, we got to go all the way out, because I mean, our conference got enormous, and some of those schools are really far away, and it just might help to set that tone for coaches buying into, we are student athletes, we're not athletic students, and so we're going to make it possible for you to get some of this done, because it's important to all of us, because we need you to have the grades to continue to be eligible. So maybe an idea of something like that.
Adding on to that, it's probably a topic for the future to talk about it more. But I know if you're in a varsity sport, you can need it excused for gym. I think that's only for juniors and seniors now. But I feel like that I have it right now, and I feel like that would have been something really helpful. Sophomore, even it can still be restricted to varsity year, but sophomore and freshman year, because I know that's alleviated a lot of stress on me, that that I have that time that I can do my homework that I would have spent that I could have done during the practice time. So probably like a future topic.
It's a great topic because there's some legislation in front of the state this year that may actually limit schools' ability to do that outside of junior, senior year. But when that gets settled, that'll be a good topic. Good.
Talking about just studying in general, I feel like having study hall as a class makes it's so much more limited because I have no room in my schedule to take a study hall whatsoever. And I think having Den as that time, not to knock Den activities again because I love some of them, but having like maybe like one week we have just one study hall week, and then the next week we have like 2 days of study hall like we do right now, because I know I use my Den time wisely. I don't know about some other kids in my class, but I like to use my time to actually do my homework that I need to catch up on. It's because I don't have time to take a study hall, and I think that's really important. Like being in a school setting, like Mrs. Dusing said, like being in a setting, but like being in the mindset of school helps me focus way more. So I think something like different like that, because I really want to take a study hall, but I would have to take a 0 hour, and I'm just not up for that. So yeah.
All right. These are great topics, guys. It's a good start. As you think of more, though, feel free to reach out, any of us on the admin team anytime, and we can add it in. And what you've said will be on the internet forever. So we'll go back and check it. So with that, we went a little over our time. This is a really good dialogue today. Before we adjourn, I just want to say this will be my last PTAC meeting with you guys, but I really want to thank you. We've had big challenges as a school that we've navigated, and your input and your willingness to discuss positively and to work productively is incredible. And WeGo's in good hands. So I'm excited for everything I know that this group will do in the future and for all the support you guys have given us. So thank you so much for that. And then I will entertain any motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Ashley motions. Anybody want a second? Second. Ms. Weber seconds. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, good.